I'm going to cover an AC line repair job that I did last spring and still going strong. Due to the tight spot and curve in the line, I opted to use the option shown, which is a Dorman Line Splice Kit. Here's the section of high pressure line I cut out using a tubing cutter. The outside diameter of the line was 5/16 of an inch, and as you can see, there wasn't a whole lot of room. This tubing cutter is a newer model of the one I have. It'll work on any soft tubing like copper or aluminum, and I really like this one that comes with the reamer. When you cut a piece of tubing, it will likely leave a rough edge on the inside of the tubing, and this reamer will provide a clean, sharp edge that will deburr the tubing without leaving a bunch of little dust-like medical particles like a file would. The piece of bad tubing shows the rub mark where it was probably bumped with a hand at some point working underneath the hood, which put it up against the radiator support, and after enough vibration it eventually created that pinhole in the line. Here are the instructions that come with the repair kit, and the first thing you will want to do is build the repair section. There's a clip holder which has slots to place two fuel line type clamps. You want to insert those clamps into both clip holders, then grab your hose and make sure the end you start with has a square end. Here's what that assembled clip holder looks like with the clamps in place. In this same picture is a set of pliers especially made to get the intended crimp needed on this style of clamp to ensure a firm hold. This is another tool I wouldn't want to do the job without. You can find it for less than $10 at the auto parts store and was in stock when I went to buy mine. Grab one end of the line fitting which goes into the end of the hose and lubricate with refrigerant oil. Even though you won't be using a lot of the lubricant, I would recommend using the same one used in your particular AC system. In my case it was PAG 46. Once you've done that, you can put the end of the hose through the clamps until it reaches the other end of the hose clip holder, and then insert the lubricated fitting in the end until fully seated. As you can see, I did the opposite of the instructions by inserting the fitting through the clip holder and clamps, then I started the hose on it. This is of course showing before I pushed it into the hose. Here's another shot of after getting everything firmly seated. Make sure there isn't any visible gaps. You can see here there's evidence of the refrigerant oil that I managed to get all over the place. Going back to the instructions, the next step is to crimp the clamps in a particular order. You'll want to start with the clamp closest to the end of the hose and make sure you get a bite on it as far up as you can on the clamp with your pliers to get a tight crimp like what you see here. Once you get it crimped, then you can follow on by crimping the second one in the same manner. Here is the completed section ready to go. Before doing the second end, use the repair section to gauge how long the hose needs to be and then cut it to proper length before installing the other end. Next, you'll want to assemble the nut, tension ring, and sealing sleeve on each end of the hard line that was cut. Starting with sliding the nut on first, then put the brass tension ring on with the tapered end facing it into the red nut, and then take some mineral oil and lubricate the green rubber sealing sleeve and slide it over the tubing. The green sleeve has a slight taper on one end. Make sure the taper goes in first, which makes it point into the coupler. This is what the assembly order should look like on each end of the hard line. Now take the repair section and place one end up against the hard line and slide the red nut onto the threads of the line fitting, sandwiching the tension ring and the sealing sleeve in the process. Hand tighten that nut and proceed to doing the same thing on the other end. Once you've got it installed, grab a couple of wrenches, one that fits the line fitting and the other that fits the nut, and tighten it up. The instructions say it needs to be between 15 and 20 foot-pounds of torque depending on the size of the splice kit used. Now I'm betting that anyone watching this video is not going to have what it takes to get a proper torque on this. Honestly, I can't think of a way to do it other than trying to use a crow's foot in conjunction with the torque wrench. I just used two open-end wrenches and went by feel on what I thought it should be. In my case, it worked just fine. So here's the end result. The rubber hose was able to bend perfectly to match what I had cut out. It worked great. At this point, the system should be leak tested. You pull a vacuum on it to remove any moisture in the lines. Don't skip that. And then the system refilled with refrigerant. At the time I published this video, the repair had been made 4 months prior and still holding